Voltaire once wrote, "Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." That single line captures the weight of belief and how much power it can hold over people when it is presented as unquestionable truth. One of the strongest examples of this is prophecy, those passages in ancient texts that claim to reveal the future. Even today, countless believers turn to the Bible not just for spiritual guidance, but for a sense that history itself is already written. But what are we really dealing with when we hear about biblical prophecy? Is it supernatural prediction? Or is it simply human pattern-making dressed up as divine foresight? When people talk about prophecy in the Bible, they often point to verses they believe predicted events like the fall of cities, the rise of kings, or even modern events like world wars and the founding of nations. At first glance, it feels compelling. The idea that words written thousands of years ago line up with things happening now gives a sense of mystery and authority. But if we slow down and examine how prophecy works, a different picture begins to emerge. Prophecy doesn't need to be accurate in order to feel convincing. It only needs to be vague enough that people can attach it to events after the fact. One of the most striking features of biblical prophecy is its ambiguity. Predictions are often worded in poetic or symbolic language, with multiple possible meanings. This means that after something happens, people can go back and discover that it was foretold. This isn't prophecy in the sense of predicting the future, it's retroactive fitting. For example, the book of Daniel is often cited as predicting the rise and fall of empires. But scholars widely agree that much of Daniel was written during or after the events it supposedly predicts. In other words, it wasn't a forecast. It was historical commentary disguised as prediction, giving the impression of divine foresight. This retroactive reading is not unique to the Bible. It happens with other so-called prophets too, like Nostradamus. His quatrains are famously vague, yet after nearly every major world event, someone claims he predicted it. After 9/11, after the pandemic, after wars and disasters, there are endless articles linking his writings to modern events. But if you read them without context, they could just as easily apply to dozens of other things. The same mechanism applies to biblical prophecy. Vague wording, combined with selective interpretation, creates the illusion of supernatural accuracy. Another key factor is human psychology. We are pattern-seeking creatures. Our brains are wired to connect dots, even when those dots aren't really connected. This tendency, called apophenia, explains why people see shapes in clouds or hear hidden messages in songs. Prophecy works in the same way. A person who expects to find meaning in scripture will naturally link it to world events, even if the connection is weak. Once a connection is found, it feels powerful, and people cling to it because it reinforces their belief that their sacred text has authority over history itself. But prophecy does more than just comfort believers. It also creates a sense of urgency and destiny. When people believe that the Bible predicts specific events, especially about the end of the world, it shapes how they act in the present. This has political consequences. In the United States, for instance, belief in biblical prophecy has influenced foreign policy, particularly around support for Israel. Some Christians see modern events in the Middle East as signs of biblical predictions unfolding, which drives political stances that affect millions of lives. What begins as a private belief in prophecy can end up influencing global decisions. It's also worth asking why prophecy is so emotionally attractive. Part of it comes from the desire for certainty. Life is uncertain, history is chaotic, and the future is unknowable. Prophecy seems to cut through that uncertainty by saying, "This has already been written." That is a deeply comforting thought. It tells people that no matter how chaotic things seem, there's a hidden plan at work. The problem is that comfort doesn't equal truth. Just because something makes us feel safe doesn't mean it reflects reality. Another layer to consider is how prophecy is used as a tool of authority. In ancient times, claiming prophetic knowledge was a way to assert power. If a prophet could say, "This king will rise, this nation will fall," and then events unfolded in a way that seemed to match, their authority grew. Even today, pastors and religious leaders use prophecy to command attention. Some claim to know which modern events are fulfilling scripture and, by extension, position themselves as guides to the future. This isn't just about faith, it's about influence and control. There's also the issue of failed prophecies. Throughout history, countless predictions drawn from the Bible have simply not come true. Many Christians in the 19th century believed the world would end in 1844. Others predicted 1914. More recently, leaders set dates for the apocalypse in 2000, 2012, and beyond. Each time, when the prediction failed, believers often rationalized it rather than abandon the idea of prophecy altogether. This is a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When reality contradicts belief, people adjust their interpretation instead of giving up the belief. Prophecy survives not because it works, but because people reinterpret failure as part of a larger, mysterious plan. One way to test the idea of prophecy is to ask, can we use it to predict the future in advance, with clarity? If biblical prophecy truly had divine power, it should allow us to pinpoint events before they happen. Yet no one has ever used the Bible to make specific, reliable predictions about modern events ahead of time. The so-called hits only appear clear in hindsight. Without the benefit of looking backward, prophecy is too vague to guide anyone in real-world decision-making. Another often overlooked point is how selective people are with prophecy. Believers highlight verses that seem to fit, but ignore others that clearly don't. The Bible contains many failed prophecies. For example, the prophet Ezekiel predicted the complete destruction of the city of Tyre, saying it would never be rebuilt. Yet Tyre exists today with a population of over 100,000 people. If prophecy were truly divine, it should be consistent, not hit or miss. The fact that people have to cherry-pick what counts as fulfillment shows that it is not supernatural knowledge, but human interpretation. The larger question, then, is why we continue to give prophecy so much weight. Part of the answer is cultural. In societies where scripture is treated as sacred, prophecy is seen as proof of divine authorship. It becomes a badge of credibility for the whole religion. But if we strip away the assumption of divine inspiration, prophecy looks like something else entirely, a blend of hindsight, vague symbolism, human psychology, and the natural desire for order in a chaotic world. It's fascinating to consider that prophecy tells us less about the future and more about the present mindset of the people who believe in it. When someone insists that a modern war, disaster, or political event fulfills prophecy, they are really revealing how they interpret reality, how they assign meaning, and what they fear or hope for. Prophecy becomes a mirror reflecting human concerns more than a window into the future. The more closely we study prophecy, the clearer it becomes that it doesn't need supernatural explanation. It functions perfectly well as a human phenomenon, shaped by language, culture, psychology, and history. It offers comfort, authority, and meaning, but not reliable foresight. As the philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "The fact that an opinion has been widely held is no evidence whatever that it is not utterly absurd." Prophecy has been widely held, passionately defended, and endlessly reinterpreted. But when tested against reality, it dissolves into ambiguity. In the end, prophecy is not a roadmap of the future. It is a collection of human words, subject to human flaws, reshaped across centuries by human hands and minds. What gives prophecy its power is not its accuracy, but our willingness to believe in it. And once we see that, the mystery fades, leaving us with something even more interesting: the chance to study why we believe, how we search for patterns, and what it means that we want the future to already be written.